I learned a bizarre system to remember everything. The only problem was, it was too good. I could memorize every detail, every stupid nugget of information like the back of my hand. And because of it, I actually became one of the worst doctors in my entire class. Hi friends, if you're new to this channel, I'm a practicing doctor with degrees from both Harvard and Yale. I run an ER as a medical director in my day job and make videos on the side helping people get more out of life in pursuit of becoming their best selves. In this video, I'll tell you the story of how I spent 6 years of my life in one of the craziest learning experiments I've ever done and teach you what I learned so you become better than me. I knew medical school was going to be tough. I've heard the stories, the sleepless nights, the never-ending fire hose of knowledge, taking tests that determine what kind of doctor you got to be. If your goal is to become a neurosurgeon and you end up becoming a butt doctor, clearly you screwed up somewhere. This was serious stuff, and because of that, I needed a secret weapon. Sure, I had pretty good systems in place already, but it didn't hurt to improve, right? And so, I first asked the people already in medical school. Surely, if there was some secret technique, they would have figured it out already. Advice I got was this: just study more, skip meals, wear the same underwear every day. Clearly not what I was hoping to hear. And so, I brought in my search, and that's how I landed on one of the most important books of my life, the book that started it all, Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer, The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. The story is absolutely fascinating. Joshua, the author, is a journalist tasked with writing about the US Memory Championship, people who can memorize the order of an entire deck of poker cards in 15 seconds or less. He expects these people to be savants with IQ levels over 1,000, but is surprised to learn these memory champions are just everyday normal people. I don't remember exactly what jobs they had, but they were regular old Joe jobs: accountants, librarians, bus drivers, hamster walkers, whatever. In fact, Joshua is so impressed he decides to try it himself, and after just 1 year of training goes back and wins the entire damn championship himself. I thought to myself, oh my god, if superhuman memory is trainable, there's no reason why I can't train myself to do this too. With even a 20% increase in raw memorization power, I'd crush medical school. And so, my mission was clear. For the next 2 years, I trained my brain in the same memory techniques these memory champions did too, using industrial noise-removing earmuffs and these weird goggles that blocked out all distractions. I remember starting my day memorizing 500 random numbers with these things. I'd pull up this random number generator and tell it to spit out 100 random digits. I'd be in my room and time how long it would take me to memorize 100 digits, doing sets of 5 like I was at the gym. At the peak of my training, I was memorizing 100 digits in 60 seconds or less. I remember one funny event that happened during all this. The local pie shop in my town was having a promotion on March 14th. You know, because it's pie. 3.14. If you memorize 25 digits of pi, you get a free slice. If you memorize 100 digits, you get an entire pie. My friends called me up to do it, and while we were waiting in line, I crammed those digits into my brain like there was a gun to my head. I never wanted pi more in my life than that instant. People ahead of me were reciting these digits and stuttering on the 13th digit, and then there's weirdo me, dishing out 500 digits like it was nothing. The pie shop owner was not amused, but we walked home with a bunch of free pies that day. It was amazing. So, after stuffing my face full of pie, I went back to study for the MCAT, which, if you don't know, is kind of like the SAT, but for medical school. To become a doctor, I've taken more standardized tests than any sane human being should ever have to do, and because of this, I can confidently say the best way to ace these things is to do as many practice questions as possible. So, I've been talking about this memory system this entire time. How does it actually work? It's a variation of the memory palace, something you've likely heard of before. If you haven't, the concept is pretty simple. Our brains are maybe 100 times better at remembering visual information compared to abstract concepts. It makes sense, right? Our ancestors needed to remember how to get back to their cave after hunting in the savannah, not some differential equation in calculus. They needed to know what lion shit looks like and which berries gave them massive diarrhea. Think about your own home. Did you have to spend hours memorizing what your apartment looks like or where the toilet is? No, you go there once, see where the toilet is, and boom, that's it. It's forever in your memory now. You'll always know where the bathroom is. This is the kind of innate memory we need to capitalize on. Technique is about creatively transforming information into visual markers you then place in your home. Take a grocery list, for example. Instead of writing it down, visualize a giant forest of leafy greens now infesting your front door. You wade through those leaves, unlock the door, and trip over a giant tub of cottage cheese you can almost swim in. Down the hallway is a giant life-size creepy doll holding the mangled head of Bugs Bunny. Oh yeah, that's the visual cue for carrots. The weirder and crazier you can make it, the more memorable it becomes. You can fill your entire house with visual cues. Over time, and with enough training, you can expand the concept beyond linear lists and form visuals with relational hierarchies. Your bedroom is going to be everything you just learned in lecture number 1 regarding bleeding from your gastrointestinal tract, aka GI bleeding. In medical school, you'll realize there are 2 different types: upper GI bleeding and lower GI bleeding. A giant fat guy with a beer belly is sleeping in your bed. He looks like crap and smells like shit. Uh-oh. No wonder, he's soiled himself. He's literally sleeping in black tarry stool. It's all over your bed. Black stool is the telltale sign of upper GI bleeding. He's holding a giant pitcher of beer like a teddy bear. No wonder. Alcoholism is a huge risk factor. Under the bed is where you store information for lower GI bleeding. You remember that it's lower because it's underneath the fat guy representing upper GI bleeds. The floor under your bed is stained with bright red blood, the telltale sign of lower GI bleeding. It's soaked through the carpet and is now warping the floorboards, causing all these little bubbles to appear throughout. There's so many, your face is crawling with discomfort. Oh, that's good though, because now you're reminded the most common cause for lower GI bleeding is diverticular bleeding. Diverticula are these little bubble cavities, outpouchings that form from the walls of your colon that can bleed massively. As you can see, I'm engaging all your senses and building an entire world in your mind's eye. You didn't even have to write anything down. That's the power of this system. It's so good, in fact, I can literally memorize an entire textbook in this same way. Sure, eventually you'll run out of spots in your house, but there's no reason why you can't expand beyond it. Imagine enlarging the pitcher of beer the fat guy in your bedroom was snuggling with. It's now the size of a football field. And at the bottom of this football field-sized pitcher is your entire school. If you wanted to add more information about why alcohol is a risk factor for GI bleeds, you now have an entire school to work with, linked by this portal you just created in the beer. This is what I call the inception technique. By the way, if you want to learn more and get a deep dive in how I structure this learning system for all sorts of subjects, not just limited to medicine, and enroll in an entire course filled with exercises to teach you everything I've built and mastered over the past 10 years, email me and I'll put you on the wait list. So basically throughout medical school, while everyone else was studying the normal way, I was busy building entire universes in my mind. By the time medical school was done, I must have had literally an entire New York City's worth of interconnected buildings and objects. Having exhausted all the places I knew, I was perpetually on the hunt for more interesting places, memorable little nooks or crannies I could then cram more information into. It didn't even need to be a building. With the inception technique, you can literally fit an entire textbook in a tiny fake potted plant like this. So you may be wondering now, what's the problem? Sounds like an amazing technique. Where did you go wrong? How did you become one of the worst doctors in your class? If you use grades and scores to evaluate me, then no. I got honors, amazing board scores, and secured my place in a Harvard hospital for residency. But if you evaluated me on a depth of understanding and practical usability, I was horrible. Think of it this way. Let's say English is your first language. You know it so innately because it's so deeply intertwined with everything. It's foundational to how you see and describe the entire world. You have memories of words and phrases from repeated natural use in everyday life since you were a baby. You don't have the English language stored in a fantastical, albeit amazing creative visual universe. Well, you could, but building such a universe takes brain energy, and accessing the information in that visual universe also takes brain energy. Though it is incredibly efficient, at some point in time, you need to make what I call the transition. A natural English speaker inherently has an image of a pineapple when he or she hears pineapple, right? They don't have a memory palace house where there's a pine tree in one room to designate the pine part of the word and an apple in another part of the house to designate the second half of the word. Having to mash them together like this is obviously inefficient compared to those who simply innately understand what a pineapple is. When the example is easy like this, of course, that makes sense. But when the subject matter becomes complicated or overwhelming, having a blazing fast memory palace system to put it together is nice. But if your understanding of the subject matter doesn't evolve beyond that initial system, you'll eventually lose the race against those who do naturally build the complex connections of true understanding. Because that's what real learning is, right? It takes time for you to see all the nuances in context. Like all mnemonics, the visual-based memory palace system is but a crutch, a stepping stone to true understanding. Problem is, when the crutch is so insanely powerful and gets the job done so quickly, you forget it's just a crutch and forget to truly internalize the concept like that of a native speaker. As a result of all this, I was a weak junior doctor in the beginning of my training after medical school. My peers were already getting somewhat fluent in the language of medicine, while I was always one step behind. It took me an entire year to course correct and get back on track. The experience was eye-opening though, and gave me insight on what real learning looks like. Since then, my learning systems have upgraded tremendously with the memory palace as one tool of many, albeit one important razor-sharp one to be used with great care and in the right context. If you're interested to learn more about my learning systems, I made another video on learning anything 10 times faster right here. Smell you later.